On Mother's Day, I prepared an amazing dinner for my family, but no one came. That night, an unexpected truth unraveled my world. Sarah stood in her kitchen, her hands submerged in cool water as she rinsed out the last of the dishes from the elaborate seafood gumbo. The intoxicating aroma filled the air, pulling her thoughts back to her mother, who had once stood in this very spot, stirring the pot with far more gusto than Sarah felt she could muster. She had promised herself that tonight would be the night her family would come together, celebrating her role as a mother, as her own mother had done before her. But as the clock ticked closer to dinner, doubt began to seep in a cloud of anxiety lingering just above the warm glow of the table she had set so carefully. When did it all begin to feel so lonely? She glanced at the empty seats, imagining Helen and Timmy nestled around the table, laughter punctuating the clinks and clatter of dinnerware. Instead, the hollow space taunted her. After weeks of planning, the anticipation she had felt in her heart turned to unease as news of Helen's plans emerged. A party, of course, with friends. Timmy, oblivious to her efforts, had a game to attend, one he had somehow managed to forget to mention until this morning. Disappointment, she whispered under her breath, each syllable heavy with a weight she didn't know how to carry. As her phone vibrated with yet another message that wasn't about dinner, she fought against waves of self-doubt. Is being a devoted mother enough? Mourning the ghosts of her aspirations, she took a deep breath, the tension in her shoulders tightening at the thought. What was she but a caregiver, a nurse forever meeting the needs of others, with her dreams fading like the light outside? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Mia's arrival broke the oppressive silence that had settled in Sarah's chest like a stone. The sight of cheerful blooms, the laughter hovering around her friend, felt both a balm and a fresh stab to her heart. Sarah, what's wrong? Mia asked, looking between the untouched food and the glimmer of hope dimming in Sarah's eyes. Mother's Day, remember? Sarah began, but the bitterness of her voice surprised even her. This dinner was supposed to mean something. Mia's look shifted, concern knitting her brows together. It prompted Sarah to share her frustrations, her deep-seated fears of being less than perfect. Just when Sarah felt her identity starting to fracture, Mia spoke of a secret from Sarah's mother, a woman filled with dreams that were swallowed whole by life's demands. The sudden rush of her mother's buried legacy ignited a flame in Sarah, a desperate need to uncover what was lost. Who was her mother beyond the woman serving her dinner, and what sacrifices had led her here? Yet, as Sarah navigated this new twist in her family's history, her chest tightened. The revelations filled her mind, each one adding a layer of complexity to her own battles. What if connecting with her mother's story, her ambition, meant reevaluating her own sacrifices? As she sat at the table, dim lights casting shadows across her solitary setting, her heart raced with understanding but also fear. What does being a mother mean if part of herself remains buried under that title? The clinking of forks echoed in the silence of the dining room as Sarah's thoughts surged with urgency. A deep yearning began to bloom, one that whispered it wasn't too late to reclaim her identity. But as she looked at the empty seats, laden with all the warmth and connection that had escaped her grasp, her breaths came quick and anxious. Tonight was supposed to be a new beginning. Might it instead be the frustration of a life lost in the demands of motherhood? As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows enveloping the room, Sarah knew she stood on a precipice. Answers were waiting, but so was the deep pull of uncertainty. What other truths lay buried, and how would they reshape her understanding of love, legacy, and self? As the first rays of morning light filtered through her kitchen window, Sarah surveyed the aftermath of the night before. The remnants of her effort lay scattered around her, a stark reminder of the emotional chasm between her and her family. The half-eaten gumbo still clung to the pan, a manifestation of her unendurable loneliness. In that moment, a shift began to stir within her, a need to confront the truth Mia had unearthed, to understand her mother's legacy and how it intertwined with her own identity. With renewed determination, she picked up her phone and hesitated. She could call Mia, seek more guidance, or perhaps connect with her mother's friends. Their stories could shed light on the person her mother had been beyond motherhood. Instead, she pursued another path, one that demanded courage. She opened her laptop and navigated to a local community center's website, where classes were offered in various subjects, including art, writing, and cooking, hobbies her mother had once loved but forfeited in the throes of responsibility. But the choice to enroll in even a single class felt monumental, a leap into waters so alien she could hardly recognize herself. What emerged was not merely a scheduling conflict with family but an internal battle against long-held beliefs about her role. Could she claim any of those classes for herself? The thought churned a storm of guilt in her, fighting against the growing ember of resolve within her. Later, while driving Timmy to school, she steeled herself for an open conversation. "So, do you think I should take a class?" she ventured, catching him off guard. He turned to her with a frown, his face reflecting youthful confusion. "For what?" he asked, and her heart sank a little deeper. "For me." "Like something just for me," Sarah replied, keeping her tone light but firm. Timmy shrugged. "Sure, but who's going to help out at home?" He turned back to his phone, oblivious to the weight of his words. The brief scrimmage of self-doubt fluttered back, gnawing at her resolve. At that moment, she needed to hear her son value her identity as a person, not just as the caretaker. After dropping him off, the silence of the car wrapped around her as she wrestled with thoughts of worth. Shouldn't her own aspirations and dreams hold as much value as Timmy's soccer games or Helen's parties? Fueled by defiance, she veered toward the community center, determined to step into this unknown that beckoned her. Once inside, her heart raced as she perused a bulletin board filled with vibrant ads for courses and workshops. Did art mean weakness when the canvas was supposed to have heart? Slowly, she approached a sign-up sheet for a creative writing course. Just as her pen hovered over the paper, the memory of an unfinished poem her mother had penned long ago washed over her. The ink had faded, but the words whispered promise. They were hopeful, alive in a way she'd long forgotten. By the end of that first class, a part of her felt liberated, roused by the energy of collective creativity. As the instructor prompted everyone to share their stories, the fear of vulnerability entwined with a newfound exhilaration. Feeling the weight of others listening as she read, Sarah was astonished to find release spilling from her heart. Her desires, regrets, and ambitions fused into raw expression on the page. Here, connected through shared narratives, she discovered a community of individuals grappling with their identities, each echoing her struggles. But as the class concluded, a shadow loomed. It wasn't enough to share, she had to bring what she unearthed back into her life, and that meant confronting her family. What would that entail? Could she wrestle her place in their lives while pursuing her own? Days turned into weeks as Sarah navigated this new realm, and yet, the question loomed heavier than before. Would she have the strength to change the narrative that bound her family to her past? The true test was waiting at home, where heartfelt conversations now stood as daunting as climbing a mountain. This wasn't just a journey of self-discovery, it threatened to realign the very foundations of her familial connection. As she sat in the car, fingers hovering over the wheel, uncertainty gripped her tightly. The time had come to face her family's expectations, her fear of judgment, and the ambition blooming inside her. But would they accept the woman she was becoming? With a deep breath, Sarah turned the engine on, determination swelling within her as she drove toward home. Whatever awaited her at that threshold, she was ready to engage. And as she caught sight of the familiar street sign, a new question formed in her mind. Could this be the moment when she would finally reclaim her voice? Sarah parked her car in the driveway, a sense of foreboding settling over her like a heavy cloak. The house loomed in front of her, quiet and unassuming. She could already envision the dinner table set with mismatched plates, remnants of the last meal she had prepared that had been met with disinterest. The thought of repetition clawed at her. But today had to be different. Today, she was different. As she stepped inside, the familiar sense of their home engulfed her: old wood, lingering spices, the faint musk of laundry, and with each inhalation, she felt emboldened yet terrified. She resolved to advocate for herself rather than cower beneath the weight of familial expectation. As she called out to Timmy and Helen, her voice held a tremor, betraying her nerves. "Hey, guys, can we talk for a minute? Timmy emerged from the living room, eyes glued to his tablet, a slight frown etched across his face. Helen followed, her arms crossed, radiating the sort of teenage defiance that suggested Sarah's interruption was an unwelcome disturbance. Can it wait? Timmy asked, tone bleary. No, it can't, Sarah replied, summoning firmness. The resolve she had nurtured during her writing classes fell into place, urging her to stand her ground. Okay, what's up? Helen's tone dripped with disdain, but Sarah noted the flicker of curiosity in her daughter's eyes. Taking a deep breath, Sarah initiated the conversation she had rehearsed 1,000 times in her mind. I've started a writing class, she began, her voice slightly shaky but defiant. Oh, that's nice, Helen replied, a hint of sarcasm lacing her words. Instead of discouraging Sarah, it deepened her conviction. Actually, it's more than that. It's helping me explore things about myself that I've neglected. She searched their faces, desperately seeking understanding. Timmy returned to his tablet, while Helen rolled her eyes. So? You're going to write about when you try to get a life? Exactly. Sarah's heart thundered as she pushed through the irritation. This matters to me. And I want to show you both that it's okay to have a life outside of what others expect. The quiet swallowed her declaration, an uneasy tension thickening the air. But Sarah persisted, unwilling to retreat. Just because I'm your mom doesn't mean I can't pursue my interests. I need to reclaim the parts of myself that I thought were lost. It's time you see me this way. In the silence that followed, Sarah could feel the pulse of vulnerability brimming to the surface. Timmy finally glanced up, his brow furrowed. Hopefully, his reaction would be different from before. Perhaps he would finally see her, the woman beyond the roles she fulfilled. I guess it's kinda cool that you're doing something for yourself, he said slowly, less dismissive than moments earlier. It could be more cool if you joined me, she suggested, heart racing at the prospect of a united family interest. Join you in what? Helen interjected, mock annoyance mixing with slight intrigue. Writing. Art. You both could find something you like, Sarah proposed, her voice more confident now. Perhaps engaging them directly would sow the seeds of empathy. Silence returned, but now it felt less intimidating, more contemplative. Perhaps she should have pressed harder. Would they behold the importance of creative self-expression? At that moment, the phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, interrupting the stillness. A message from Mia. Sarah felt a rush of encouragement as she glanced at the screen, her mentor reminding her about the next writing assignment due. It was about expressing truth through narrative. A spark of inspiration ignited within her, and she realized perhaps this was the truth she could share with her family. I want my writing to encourage all of us, she continued, her determination revitalized. I want us to talk about hopes or doubts or anything. Everything is valid to me. I don't want you to see me just as your caretaker. I want to be seen. The room echoed her words, reverberating off the walls, and Sarah felt within herself a burgeoning hope, an undeniable connection beginning to blossom, but the truth remained. Would they engage with her, or was she stepping into this new role alone? As she watched the slight shifting of Timmy's expression, a flicker of hope ignited. Perhaps they were closer to understanding than she had dared to believe. With renewed courage swelling inside her, Sarah's fingers brushed the surface of her laptop, already imagining the words she would weave next, a narrative both personal and collective. And in that moment, a new question loomed, one heavier than the last. Could vulnerability become the bridge that transformed their family dynamics forever? As the evening light faded outside, casting long shadows across the room, Sarah felt that familiar weight of uncertainty tugging at her. She wanted to believe in the resonance of her words, but self-doubt lurked just beneath the surface, itching to take hold again. Would Timmy and Helen embrace her initiative, or would they retreat, crammed back into their indifference like a forgotten toy? After their brief exchange, she sensed her children considering her proposal. Helen, for all her feigned indifference, was tracing a finger along the seams of her crossed arms, and Timmy's eyes darted between the screen and his mother. Their moments of contemplation filled Sarah with anticipation but also dread. What if this spark she ignited fizzled out, leaving her standing in cold silence? Sarah turned to the kitchen, needing an anchor to ground her swirling thoughts. The countertops, littered with the remnants of routine cooking a half-chopped onion and a scattering of herbs, invited her back into practical tasks she knew so well. Pushing her fear beneath the surface, she gathered the ingredients for a simple dinner. The act of slicing and stirring offered solace, a rhythm to help her think. How was school today? She called over her shoulder, a carefully crafted distraction as she worked. Okay, Timmy mumbled, his attention clearly still on his tablet, but Sarah noticed the slight tone shift, more engaged, less dismissive. Helen mulled for a moment, then launched into a retelling of some drama with her friends. Sitting at the kitchen table, she filled the space with a touch of annoyance that was undercut by genuine interest. As Sarah stirred the pot, she allowed her mind to drift back to her writing class. The process of crafting narratives from personal truths could pave a new avenue for both her and her family. She remembered Mia's advice: your story matters. Don't shy away from vulnerability. Perhaps today was her chance to embrace it fully. Actually, I have a prompt I've been working on, she said, coaxing the words out. What if each of us shared our own stories about a pivotal moment in our lives? It could be anything embarrassing, inspiring, or painful. She kept stirring, not daring to look up fully, her heart racing at the potential for deeper connection. The response was a silence laden with raw reflection. She glimpsed the corner of Timmy's mouth twitching, as if the suggestion sparked something hidden. Helen rotated her fork absently, uncertainty crossing her face. Was it genuinely an idea worth exploring, or merely a fleeting whim? I guess I could write about the time I lost the soccer game, Timmy finally said, his tone tentative, opening the door just slightly. With that, a cascade of thoughts poured out. Helen joined in with tales of a tumultuous school project, questioning her abilities, while Sarah listened intently, her heart swelling as she observed the barriers of family dynamics beginning to tremble. There was a tension, however, hovering just out of reach, the balance between preserving their vulnerability and risking exposure gnawed at Sarah. What if sharing these narratives revealed deeper issues they weren't prepared to confront? As they transitioned from silence to dialogue, Sarah realized she had unwittingly woven herself into an intricate tapestry of their unspooled lives. Each thread held its complexities, be it embarrassment, laughter, or tears. Dinner fluidly morphed from a mundane task into a back-and-forth exchange, their voices peppered with anecdotes and hesitant laughter. Yet, a gnawing question lingered within Sarah: would this new dynamic withstand the pressures of everyday life, or were they merely riding the fleeting high of connection? The moisture in her palms spoke of her apprehension, but as she poured them each a glass of lemonade, she felt a further softening. Perhaps it was the unspoken acknowledgement that their tales mattered. Taking her seat, her resolve to truly connect solidified. As she looked at their faces illuminated softly by the dining room light, a flicker of hope surged inside her. But would tomorrow bring the same openness, or would the walls they had broken down once again rise, taller than before? The possibilities both excited and terrified her. And as she began to contemplate her next writing assignment, another question hovered at the back of her mind: could this family unit transform through the power of shared vulnerability? Despite the warmth of their engaging dinner, uneasiness shadowed Sarah as she retreated to her room that night. The laughter still echoed in her mind, but so did the underlying fear that their brief connection was fragile. She felt the tremors of her resolve. The thrill of shared storytelling floated above the reality of their daily lives, where routines often dull their potential for intimacy. Once in bed, she grabbed her notebook, the blank pages silently challenging her to reflect. What was it that she truly wanted for her family? Connection was not a thing easily built and certainly not unbroken. The fear of reversion to old habits settled in, a whisper of doubt as she nervously scribbled words that articulated her deepest desires for her children's lives to expand beyond their screens, their distractions, and each other's shadows. Could vulnerability lead to strength for them? What if exposing their flaws wouldn't liberate them but instead fracture the few connections she had managed to cultivate? As she wrote, she replayed the moments of their dinner, dissecting each tone and gesture. Timmy's hesitance, Helen's eyebrow raises, they were signs she needed to read, yet they slipped away like vapor. She could no longer ignore the whispers of her own childhood, where feelings were hidden beneath the guise of normalcy. No longer would she ignore her own insecurities surfacing through her mothering. The idea of facilitating honesty among her children while wrestling with her own fear was paradoxical. Was she merely modeling the very patterns they were meant to confront? In seeking to enhance their dialogue, wouldn't she also have to unveil her own stories? Perhaps I should go first, she murmured softly, mulling over the idea of revisiting a significant moment of her own, the time she felt utterly unheard in her family. Surely, starting with her experiences might embolden them, create a bridge across their disparate lives. But the thought sent chills down her spine. What if her voice faltered or the past weighed too heavily? What memories would rise up that she wasn't ready to face? In resistance to her spiraling thoughts, Sarah stood and padded silently to the living room. The darkness enveloped her like a protective cloak, and the remnants of dinner still lingered in the air. There, she spotted the children's work's crumpled papers strewn across the coffee table. Each sticky note, each scribbled word, glimmered with promise. She picked up Timmy's hastily written account of his soccer game and couldn't help but smile. The raw honesty delighted her, a small boy's expanding courage, laid bare on paper. Helen's half-finished draft sat next to it, its pages marked with doodles of uncertainty but also bursts of creativity. They were not just her children but reflections of her journey, moments of potential that could flourish. Sarah couldn't help but feel a swelling pride mixed with urgency. They needed to feel the freedom she was exploring. Tomorrow, she whispered to herself. Tomorrow, I will share my story. The decision to lead by example resonated within her like a refracting echo, both intimidating and thrilling. Would this new openness expose her rawness but also ignite a strength she did not yet recognize? A seed of determination sprouted. Embracing vulnerability was the only path forward. The sun would rise upon challenges yet unseen. As sleep began to sedate her racing mind, the one lingering question unfurled: would her efforts at authentic connection bear the fruit of trust, or would their hidden fears press the reset button on their fragile communion? With the dawn came possibility, and the morning would demand follow-through. She curled up under the blankets, determination settling in her gut as she prepared for the following day, a day that might redefine their family. Still, she lay awake, knowing the real work was just beginning. How would they respond? Would her story unlock their hearts? Emboldened by the unknown, Sarah pressed her pencil to the paper, ready to embrace whatever awaited her come morning. The morning light streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the beams. Sarah pulled on her apron, heart racing with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Today marked a turning point in her approach to motherhood. Instead of serving polished, surface-level interactions, she yearned to dive into the rawness of connection. As she chopped vegetables for a hearty breakfast, thoughts of her family's reactions flooded her mind. Would they understand? Would they see the effort behind her vulnerability? Or would they recoil, retreating into their comfort zones, the cozy cocoon of silence they'd been spinning around one another? Timmy trudged into the kitchen, eyes still heavy with sleep. "What's for breakfast?" he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "How about I make your favorite, scrambled eggs and toast?" Her voice was cheerful, buoying her resolve, but a nagging whisper warned that joy could quickly become disappointment if he responded with indifference. Timmy nodded, propping himself on a stool, and Sarah's heart softened. This was her moment, a chance to invite him into something deeper. "Hey, buddy, after breakfast, can we talk? I want to share something." His curiosity piqued, Timmy turned to her, brow furrowed. "About what?" Taking a breath, she opted for clarity. "About me, and maybe a little about you too. It's important." Just then, Helen sauntered in, her hair tousled, clutching her tablet. Sarah steeled herself, readying not just for the reaction of one child but the expectations of two. "You're up early," Helen commented, dropping her bag onto the counter with a thud. "Breakfast is almost ready, and I've got something special to share," Sarah ventured, trying to keep her tone light while hoping it would inspire intrigue rather than distraction. As they sat down to eat, tension buzzed beneath the surface. Moments of silence stretched, punctuated only by the clinking of forks. But Sarah pressed on, determined. "I thought we could all share something personal today. Stories or experiences we feel we haven't talked about in a while," she began, searching their faces for signs of willingness. Timmy's brow lifted, and Helen stared at her, irritable at first. All of us? Like, for real? Yes, for real, she affirmed, her pulse racing. The loaded nature of her proposition hung thickly in the air. Would they open up, or would they suppress their lives, remaining guarded behind walls Sarah had begun to understand were her own doing? Why would we do that? Helen's skepticism clashed with her curiosity, and Sarah felt a tug-of-war in her heart. Because it's important, Sarah insisted, her voice stronger now. When we share, we learn about each other. We grow, and we can become closer. But what if it's embarrassing? Timmy asked, the innocence in his voice grounding her chaotic thoughts. That's the point, Sarah replied softly, vulnerability fluttering through her. We all have things we hide because we fear judgment, but sharing those parts can actually connect us more deeply. They exchanged glances, an electric tension igniting the room. Helen frowned and looked down at her plate, while Timmy's munching paused, caught somewhere between curiosity and disbelief. Like what? Helen shot back, probing with the caustic skepticism of a teenager pushing limits. In that moment, Sarah felt raw and exposed. She could either stall or lead by example. I can go first if it helps, she offered, swallowing hard. There's something I've never shared with you two about my childhood. The room turned electric, vibrant with the weight of her decision. Unexpectedly, fear surged within as she opened the floodgates of memories she had tucked away. But just as she began to recount her story, a loud crash echoed from outside. All three heads turned to the commotion by the window, and Sarah felt a familiar dread creep in. It was a change in momentum, a distraction from her carefully laid plan. Would this rupture ruin everything? She took a deep breath, forcing herself to center back on what mattered. The moment for honesty felt so close, yet the universe was testing her commitment. Could she stay steady and embrace the uncertainty ahead? Would her children remain engaged and intrigued, or would the bright possibility of connection slip back into the shadows of avoidance? As the noise outside quieted, her heart hammered a mixture of hope and fear surging within her. Would today be the day they crossed the threshold into authenticity? Sarah's grip tightened around the edge of the table. She felt anchored by the familiar wood as she steadied herself amidst the swirling emotions. The intruding noise outside seemed to recede, replaced by the sound of her own heartbeat, pounding loudly in her ears. Her children's expressions varied, Timmy's curiosity still glimmering, while Helen wore her typical teenage skepticism like a badge. Okay, she said slowly, choosing her words with care, I'll go first, like I said. As she began to speak, she sensed their attention wavering. Helen picked at her toast, eyes darting between her plate and her mother, while Timmy leaned forward, his eyebrows raised in anticipation. The stakes felt high. She knew that sharing might either bridge the gap between them or widen it irrevocably. I grew up in a small town, Sarah started, her voice steadying. I didn't always feel like I fit in. There were moments I felt invisible, especially during family gatherings where everyone seemed to be laughing and having fun, and I just lurked around the edges. Timmy's face scrunched up, and Helen interjected, that sounds like every family dinner. What's your point? Her tone was sharp, carrying the impatience of youth, yet Sarah could sense something deeper, boredom or familiarity, perhaps. It's more complicated than that, Sarah insisted, lifting her chin, letting vulnerability tinge her words. I learned early on to hide parts of myself. I molded into someone who was just smiling on the outside to avoid digging into those feelings of alienation. I wanted to fit in, wanted to be accepted. The air thickened with weight, and Sarah took a breath, anticipating the response from her children. I'm not saying it was all bad, she continued. I had happy moments, but there were days where I felt I had to perform, even for my own family. I never really learned how to ask for help or to express my true feelings. And that made me feel alone. She caught Timmy glancing away, his mind likely swirling with thoughts of his own experiences at school. Helen rolled her eyes at the emotional spill, but Sarah pressed on, feeling the tension in the room challenge her resolve. This is what I mean about sharing, she pressed, her conviction bubbling beneath her anxiety. I want you two to understand that being vulnerable isn't a weakness. It's part of being human. We can show each other our flaws, our struggles, and that's how we become closer as a family. There was a shift in the atmosphere, a flicker of understanding perhaps, but then a low murmur of annoyance broke the moment. Helen slammed her hand against the table. But you're a grown-up. It's different for you. Yes, it is, Sarah acknowledged, her voice firm yet gentle. But that doesn't mean it's any less important for us to connect as a family, no matter our ages. I need you both to know that this openness isn't just for me. I want you to share too. Helen closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, her irritation washing over into curiosity. Why should we care about your childhood? Because it shaped who I am, and it's shaping who you are as well. You both carry stories and emotions. You are allowed to express them, and I promise you won't be judged, Sarah uttered, realizing the careful balancing act she had undertaken. Timmy shifted uncomfortably, his fingers tracing the rim of his plate. What if I don't have anything interesting to say? He finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. That's the beauty of it. It doesn't need to be interesting, she replied softly. It just needs to be real. And in that moment, an unexpected honesty broke through. Timmy looked directly at Sarah, his round eyes searching hers. Okay, maybe I have something to share. Before she could respond, a loud crash resonated again outside, louder this time. The mix of anger and anxiety nearly stopped her heart. But within that distraction lay a moment of silent acknowledgement, as if the interruption served to siphon off the bubbling emotions. Sarah's mind raced. This was at their moment to shift into something deeper, to open the door to authenticity. But how could she hold on to that openness with the chaos of unanswered questions lapping at their feet? Can we talk about this later? Timmy's voice broke through the uncertainty, glancing fearfully at the window. Please, Helen added, her earlier skepticism giving way to sleet-like tension. Absolutely, Sarah responded, the determination renewed in her chest. But as fear knotted in her gut, she understood that this was about more than just openness. The universe was still testing her, and perhaps her children were ready, but only time would tell if they would embrace the authenticity she longed for. Would they step into a different dynamic, facing their fears of connection, or retreat back into their silos of silence? With that uncertainty lingering, Sarah prepared herself for whatever lay ahead, knowing their journey toward true connection had only just begun. Sarah felt the tension seep into her bones as she retreated into the kitchen. The chaos outside persisted, the sounds of clattering metal and distant shouting reminding her that life continued beyond the safety of her walls. She poured herself a glass of water, forcing herself to breathe deeply, to regain focus. Despite the walls closing in, one thing was clear: she had reached a turning point, not just for herself but for her family. As she leaned against the counter, the water's coolness contrasted sharply with the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. Her intentions were noble, she longed for connection, yet she felt the weight of cultural expectations pressing down like an anchor. Timmy's response had ignited something within her, a flicker of hope. He wanted to share, that alone was a breakthrough. She thought about how often she had felt alone in her childhood, hiding behind masks of tradition while wanting desperately to be seen. A part of her believed Timmy was simply reflecting those feelings back to her. But could she guide them through their own struggles without forcing them to relive her past? Joy and fear waged war inside her. She had a history marked by the need for validation, for the spotlight. And yet here she was, longing to eliminate that burden for her children. Pacing the kitchen, she allowed herself to brainstorm ways to navigate her own discomfort while facilitating an environment that cradled their vulnerability. Perhaps tonight would be different. Perhaps this was an opportunity to create a safe space, a contrasting sanctuary amidst their swirling lives. As she chopped vegetables for dinner, the rhythmic sound provided her solace, clearing her mind. Each slice was intentional, each ingredient added was a lesson. She recalled those family dinners, the catastrophic attempts to create harmony while hiding her deep-seated fears. Those memories, once sharp and pointed, softened as she focused on the present. Maybe cooking is my escape, Sarah pondered, visualizing her children sitting around the table, laughter mingling with the aroma of roasted garlic and fresh herbs. Yet would the comfort of familiarity be enough to crack their barriers? her phone buzzed an incoming text from a family member reminding her of plans she had only half-heartedly made. The uncertainty loomed, but in a flash, the realization struck her: she could invite her children to join her in the kitchen. Could they cook together? The thought sent a wave of anticipation through her veins. Dismissing the distractions, she set out to transform her simple dinner into an interactive experience. This is not just about food, she reminded herself. It's about forging bonds, about making the effort to be present. When Timmy and Helen finally wandered into the kitchen, their guarded postures still evident, Sarah smiled. "Want to help me with dinner?" she inquired, keeping her tone light. The moment hung delicately, like a fragile ornament suspended in midair. Timmy tilted his head inquisitively, while Helen crossed her arms, hesitation mingling with curiosity. "You want us to cook?" her daughter asked, skepticism lingering in her tone. "Just like I shared my story earlier, I want to share this experience with you both," Sarah replied, inviting them with earnestness. "Let us make something together. It can be fun, and we'll be creating memories." Each took hesitant steps toward the counter, grabbing ingredients while casting furtive glances at one another. Slowly, Sarah introduced them to the rhythm of cooking. The chopping, sorting, and sautéing felt like rebuilding bridges among them. Laughter began to bubble, drowned out only by the sizzling sounds of preparations. As the connection started to unfurl, Sarah whimpered slightly in disbelief. The act of cooking had crystallized into something transcendent. The shared task slowly transformed into story sharing, childhood anecdotes mixing with light-hearted banter, a glimpse of vulnerability cracking through their facades. Yet, even as moments of joy sparked, a flickering thought warned her what would become of this connection when the meal ended. What happened when the plates cleared? Sarah had to recognize the effort required beyond this night. The challenge of continued vulnerability loomed large in her path. "Will you both keep this up?" she questioned, testing the waters. "Can we commit to a weekly dinner where we also share about our days?" As they nodded, an intoxicating blend of optimism and trepidation coursed through her. Could they maintain this energy, this blossoming openness? In the dim light of the kitchen, she realized that the journey toward familial intimacy had no clear endpoint. This evening was merely the introduction to a much larger narrative, but just then, the sounds outside crescendoed with a deafening crash, the distant shouts rising once again. Would this moment be disrupted, leaving them standing on the precipice of newfound connection once more? Sarah turned toward the window, the urgency obvious. Their stories had barely begun to unfold. What awaited them just beyond the threshold was still unknown. Would they retreat or step into the chaos together? The chaos outside reached a fever pitch, jarring Sarah from the joy of her newfound connection with Timmy and Helen. She stood frozen for a heartbeat, weighing her options. Should she allow their tender exchange to collapse under the weight of her past fears? Or should she push through the noise, face the tumult outside, and teach her children how to embrace openness amid chaos? Gathering her resolve, she wiped her hands on a kitchen towel, the mundane act grounding her. "Let us wrap things up here and check outside," she suggested, her tone both firm and reassuring. Timmy and Helen exchanged uncertain glances but nodded, moving to follow her lead. As they approached the door, the tension built, knotting in her stomach. Stepping onto the porch, they were greeted by a torrent of insistent shouts. The street was alive with neighbors arguing, a physical manifestation of the turmoil Sarah feared rising within her family. She inhaled deeply, steeling herself for confrontation both external and internal. "What's going on?" she called out, her voice cutting through the clamor. A neighbor turned, disbelief etched on his face, his breath rapid. A delivery truck crashed down the street. "We're just trying to make sure everyone's okay." Suddenly, she was hit with the gravity of the situation, a disruption, chaos, yet something more. The moment felt like an echo of her family's struggles. Who was hurt? How did it impact them? An impulse surfaced. "Let us go help," Sarah declared, surprising herself. Timmy and Helen paused, their eyes wide. Could their mother really be suggesting they leave the safety of their home? Together, she added, in anticipation of their hesitation. "This is our chance to do something meaningful." Each child wore a mask of conflict, torn between the safety of routine and the unfamiliar light of the night's potential. As they approached the throng of neighbors, Sarah felt her heart racing not from fear, but from anticipation. This felt like a metaphor for her family breaking down barriers, stepping into discomfort, and creating bonds forged in adversity. She caught Timmy's eye, willing him to understand that this chaos was not merely disruption, it was an opportunity for communal growth. The scene unfolded around them as they reached the end of their yard. People were moving debris, shouting instructions, adrenaline coursing through them like a river. But amidst the hubbub, Sarah spotted a small crowd gathered around a woman sitting on the sidewalk, cradling her injured arm. "Let us check on her," Sarah urged, motioning for her children to follow. Timmy and Helen exchanged glances again, but their mother's determination inspired a grudging willingness to step forward. They gravitated toward the woman, and Sarah knelt beside her, feeling a powerful surge of purpose wash over her. "It's going to be okay," she reassured the woman, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "Help is on the way." In that moment, Sarah realized that vulnerability didn't just happen in closed spaces, it flourished in the chaos of life. Teaching her children to step into situations like this, to foster compassion through action, crystallized her mission. Timmy knelt by the woman's side and asked, "What happened? Can we get you something?" His sincerity delighted Sarah. The gap between them seemed to narrow, and in witnessing her son's genuine concern, she saw a glimmer of what could be the breaking of barriers through empathy. Helen joined in, offering to fetch ice. "Yes. Good idea, both of you," Sarah encouraged, her heart swelling with pride. In taking action as a family, they were weaving a tapestry of shared experience, instilling values she desperately wished to pass on. But as they worked together in the midst of the chaos, questions gnawed at her. How would this moment reshape her understanding of vulnerability? Could the lessons learned tonight extend beyond this single traumatic event? They were surviving, but could they thrive amidst the unpredictability of life? Just then, an officer approached Sarah, his voice serious as he surveyed the scene. "Could I ask you to stay back here? We're expecting more emergency personnel." Sarah's heart dropped for a moment. How could she anchor her family's emotional growth while standing in a whirlwind of uncertainty? It was as if the universe was testing her resolve. "Let South stay close but be ready to adapt," she whispered to Timmy and Helen, her voice steady despite the turmoil surrounding them. With a single instinctive glance, they acknowledged each other, forging a silent pact. Would this experience be the catalyst that sparked deeper conversations beyond the simple act of daily meals? As they found their place amidst the crowd, Sarah knew they were stepping towards a greater understanding but also recognized that the chaos ahead would bring its own challenges. As the emergency lights flashed in the distance, illuminating their path, a daunting thought crept in. Were they truly ready for the vulnerability this new life required of them? As dawn broke the day after the turmoil of the previous night, Sarah stood in her kitchen, her heart steadying as she brewed coffee. The sense of morning mixed with the remnants of yesterday lingered in the air, a fragrant reminder of both chaos and connection. Timmy and Helen had awakened early, drawn by the warmth of the household, a stark contrast to the emotional distance they had endured for so long. As they gathered around the breakfast table, Sarah felt a sense of expectancy building like the steam from her steaming mug. "Let us keep the momentum going," she decided, an invigorated sense of purpose spiraling within her. Today didn't just have to be about returning to routine, it could be about reinforcing the fragile bond she had fought so hard to establish. She could hardly believe that within the chaos, they had managed to share a moment of empathy. "Today after school, can we cook together again?" Sarah suggested, glancing at her children. Timmy responded first, grinning slightly, "Like yesterday?" "Yes. Except we can pick something from that new recipe book." Sarah beamed, feeling the anxiety of the past days give way to excitement. Helen, still balancing her teenage nonchalance, interrupted. "Are you going to share your embarrassing stories again?" she teased. With a laugh, Sarah replied, "Absolutely. But today, I want you both to share yours too." Something shifted in Helen's demeanor. She sat straighter, her curiosity piqued despite her outward bravado. As they devoured their breakfast and exchanged playful banter, Sarah could feel the new dynamic begin to thrum with potential. Conversations about vulnerabilities that once felt terrifying weren't lost in yesterday's chaos. Instead, they became the crux of their emerging bond. The kitchen, once a place of solitary effort for Sarah, felt alive with anticipation. Once the dishes were cleared and the day's routine settled, Sarah seized a moment in the quiet of her living room. Memories from her writing classes flooded her mind, where topics of self-exploration and authenticity had reshaped her thoughts about motherhood. She reached out and called Mia, excited to share last night's developments. Her friend's pride radiated from the other end of the line, a refreshing balm for Sarah's lingering insecurities. "You're doing it, Sarah. You're transforming your family narrative," Mia encouraged. "Keep fostering that openness, it's worth every ounce of effort." Hours fluttered by as Sarah navigated the errands of the day, her heart light. The real triumph awaited her at home. As evening approached, their kitchen filled with fragrant spices and fresh vegetables while Timmy diced and Helen stirred. They laughed and challenged each other, insecurities fading away in this engaging act of creation. When it came time for sharing weak moments and fears, Sarah initiated the circle, each story spinning a thread of their shared experience even tighter. Timmy cautiously admitted his fear of failing in sports, while Helen opened up about her insecurities with friends. Sarah, touched by their honesty, shared her long-buried memories of feeling invisible. With each exchange, the collective vulnerability built an unshakable foundation, one that anchored their new reality. By the time they plated their colorful creation, Sarah felt an exhilaration she hadn't experienced in years. They sat at the table together, surrounded by nourishment that was both physical and emotional. Tonight wasn't just another meal, it was a poignant and lasting connection. Weeks passed, and Sarah maintained her commitment to vulnerability, challenging her children to share their truths, helping them echo her journey. The change became palpable. The silences that once dominated were replaced with laughter, understanding, and willingness. It was a connection not easily broken, forged by the fires of shared experience, and when Sarah received an email inviting her to present her writing at a local community gathering, she didn't hesitate. This was what she had longed for, a platform to share her story and inspire others to embrace their vulnerabilities. It not only celebrated her growth but also would mark a turning point for her family. Standing before her children as she prepared to leave, a bittersweet realization struck her. "Tonight is important for us all. I want you both to remember that sharing is a strength, not a weakness." Timmy and Helen smiled, understanding how far they had come together. Her heart swelled with gratitude, a recognition that their journey was only beginning. Sarah left her home, driving into the sunset, a sense of solid confidence radiating from her being. She had molded a narrative not just for herself but also for her children, a narrative filled with understanding, resilience, and courage. As she stepped onto the stage that night, she could feel the quiet pride of her family supporting her, proof of a familial bond reinforced through the commitment to authentic connection. This was at the moment her life transformed from an isolated existence into a vibrant tapestry of shared truth. Looking out into the crowd, she knew she was not just reclaiming her voice, she was forging a legacy that would resonate far beyond herself, shaping the lives of her children and generations to come. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.